Everyone ignored the homeless woman who sat quietly under a broken awning, as cold rain soaked her thin blankets and the night grew darker with every passing minute. To most people, she was invisible, just another forgotten soul on the street. But everything changed when she heard a violent crash echo through the empty road and saw a car wrapped around a lamppost, smoke rising into the freezing air. While others drove away, pretending not to notice, she ran toward the danger without thinking about her own safety. Inside the wreck was a stranger fighting for his last breath, and the decision she made in that terrifying moment would not only save his life but uncover a connection so emotional, so unexpected, that it would leave an entire city in tears. Rain fell in thin silver needles. The city smelled of rust, wet cardboard, and forgotten dreams. Streetlights flickered like tired eyes struggling to stay open. Under the broken awning of an abandoned bakery sat a woman wrapped in layers of worn blankets. Her name was Martha. Most people knew her only as that homeless woman near 7th Street. They never asked her name. They never asked her story. Cold crept through the holes in her shoes and gnawed at her toes. Her stomach tightened with hunger, but she was used to that pain. Hunger had become a quiet companion. Loneliness had become louder. A distant siren wailed. Cars hissed across the soaked pavement. No one looked in her direction. No one ever did. She rubbed her hands together and breathed warm air onto her fingers. Then she heard it, a sharp metallic crash, followed by the violent shattering of glass. The sound bounced off the empty buildings and rushed straight into her chest. She flinched. For a moment, the street went silent again, too silent. Even the rain seemed to hesitate. Martha slowly pushed herself upright. Her knees protested. Pain shot through her hip, but curiosity pulled her forward. Around the corner, pale headlights blinked erratically. The car had slammed into a lamppost. The hood was folded like paper. Steam curled upward, mixing with the rain. No one stopped. Drivers slowed, stared, then sped away. Martha swallowed hard. Fear whispered that trouble followed accidents. Trouble meant police. Police meant questions. Questions meant being told to leave. Still, something tugged at her chest, something stronger than fear. She limped toward the wreck. Each step splashed icy water onto her ankles. The closer she came, the stronger the smell of gasoline became. It stung her nose. Inside the car, a man slumped over the steering wheel. Blood threaded down his forehead. His breathing sounded wet and uneven. "Sir," she called softly. No answer, only the ticking of the dying engine. Her heart began to hammer. She grabbed the door handle. It refused to move. She pulled harder. The door shrieked open at last. The man stirred and released a faint groan. His eyes fluttered but failed to focus. "Help me," he whispered, voice thin as paper. The words cut straight through her hesitation. She slipped her arm beneath his shoulders. He was heavier than he looked. Her muscles trembled. Rain soaked both of them within seconds. Somewhere nearby, she heard the faint crackle of something burning. The gasoline smell thickened. Fear crawled up her spine. If the car caught fire, neither of them would survive. She pulled again. The man cried out. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "You must come out now." With one final effort, she dragged him onto the slick pavement. They collapsed together in a shallow puddle. Seconds later, a spark flashed beneath the hood. Flames bloomed with a hungry roar. Heat slapped her face. She scrambled backward, dragging the man with her. The fire reflected wildly in his glassy eyes. Then the car exploded. The blast punched the air from her lungs. Shards scattered across the street like frozen rain. For a long moment, Martha could hear nothing but ringing. Her ears screamed. When sound returned, it came as distant chaos. Someone shouted. A dog barked hysterically. The man clutched her sleeve. "Why did you help me?" She met his gaze. "Because no one helped me when I needed it," she thought. But she only said, "You were alone." Sirens approached at last. Red and blue lights painted the wet road in violent color. Paramedics rushed forward. One of them paused when he noticed Martha. His expression tightened. "Step back, ma'am." She obeyed instantly. Invisible again. They loaded the stranger onto a stretcher. He reached toward her weakly. Their eyes locked for a brief second. Gratitude trembled there. Then the ambulance doors slammed shut. It disappeared into the rain. No one asked for her name. No one asked for her name. No one thanked her. Within minutes, the street returned to its usual indifference. Martha walked back to the bakery awning. Her blankets were soaked now. Her bones rattled with cold. Still, she felt strangely warm inside. Morning crept in slowly, gray and unforgiving. The next days blurred together. Wind grew harsher. Temperatures fell. One night, frost crept across the sidewalks like delicate spider webs. Martha coughed constantly. Each breath burned. Her strength began to thin. 3 days after the accident, a black sedan rolled quietly to a stop near the curb. It gleamed like a shadow among ruins. She assumed it belonged to someone important. Important people never noticed her, but the rear door opened. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a charcoal coat. Behind him stood a younger woman holding an umbrella. They scanned the street. Their eyes found Martha. The tall man approached slowly. His shoes were too clean for this neighborhood. Martha, he asked gently. Hearing her name felt like waking from a dream. Yes, she answered cautiously. The man removed his gloves. I have been searching everywhere for you. Confusion flickered across her face. Then she saw him clearly, the stranger from the wreck, except now he looked different. Alive, alert, alert. Powerful. You saved my life, he said. Emotion thickened his voice. I owe you everything, she shook her head. You owe me nothing. He studied her trembling hands, the purple tint beneath her fingernails, the cough she tried to hide. You will come with me, he said firmly. Panic flashed through her. I cannot pay for anything. I am not asking for payment. Warmth filled the car as soon as she stepped inside. The heater hummed softly. The scent of leather replaced the usual stench of the streets. Her eyes watered. Overwhelmed by comfort she had not felt in years, they drove to a hospital. Doctors examined her. Severe pneumonia, they said. Another week outside might have killed her. She slept in a real bed that night. Crisp white sheets whispered against her skin. For the first time in years, she dreamed without fear. Days passed. Color returned to her cheeks. Strength crept back into her limbs. The stranger visited often. His name was Daniel Hale, owner of one of the largest construction companies in the state. Wealth clung to him effortlessly, yet his eyes held a softness she trusted. One afternoon, he sat beside her window. Snow drifted lazily beyond the glass. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. There is a reason I was driving that night. She listened. My daughter disappeared 10 years ago. Pain cracked through his composure. I received a message that she might still be alive. Hope had made him careless, speeding through rain, missing the turn, crashing into darkness. I thought I would die before I found her. Silence wrapped around them. Then Martha spoke. What was her name? Elena. The name struck her like lightning. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. A memory stirred. Small, fragile. Years ago, during a brutal winter, Martha had discovered a little girl hiding behind a dumpster. The child had been shaking, half frozen, unable to speak. Martha had cared for her for weeks, shared scraps of food, told stories to quiet the nightmares, until authorities took the girl away. Martha had never learned what became of her. Slowly, Martha pushed herself upright. Did she have a scar shaped like a crescent on her wrist? Daniel froze. Yes, and a habit of humming when she was afraid. His breath shattered. Yes, Martha's voice trembled. I found her. The room seemed to tilt. Daniel gripped the edge of the chair. Where is she? She was sent to St. Bridget's shelter. Daniel staggered backward, overwhelmed. Within hours, calls were made, records uncovered, miracles aligned. Elena was alive, adopted by a kind family, safe. When father and daughter reunited days later, their sobs filled the hospital corridor. Nurses wiped their eyes, even the doctors. Daniel returned to Martha afterward. Tears still clung to his lashes. You saved her twice, he whispered. Weeks later, Daniel insisted she move into a small cottage he owned near the lake. Not charity, he said, gratitude. The first morning there, Martha stepped onto the porch. Sunlight spilled across the water. Enta bathed. Birdsong replaced sirens. Peace felt unfamiliar, almost frightening. Months passed gently. Then one autumn evening, a knock echoed through the cottage. Martha opened the door. A young woman stood there, eyes shining. The crescent scar glowed faintly on her wrist. Are you Martha? Emotion sealed Martha's throat. The young woman stepped forward and wrapped her in a fierce embrace. You kept me alive, Elena whispered. I never forgot your voice. They sat together for hours, sharing memories, filling the lost years. As night deepened, Elena hesitated. There is something you should know. Martha sensed the shift immediately. The night my father crashed was not an accident. Cold slid through Martha's veins. What do you mean? Someone cut his brake line. The words landed like stones. He has enemies, Elena continued. But whoever did it knew his route, knew his urgency, knew the storm would hide everything. A chill crawled along the windows. Martha's thoughts raced backward, to the wreck, to the silence before the explosion, to the shadow she had glimpsed across the street. At the time she believed it was fear playing tricks. Now she was no longer sure. That night sleep refused to come. Every creak sounded like a warning. Around midnight, tires crunched softly on gravel outside. Headlights sliced through the curtains. Too slow to be casual, too deliberate to be lost. Martha rose quietly. Her heart pounded against her ribs. A figure stepped out of the vehicle, tall, still, watching the house. The doorknob began to turn. Slowly, carefully, as if the person outside believed everyone inside was asleep. Martha felt her pulse thunder in her ears. She moved without sound. Years on the street had trained her to step like a shadow. Her eyes scanned the kitchen. A heavy iron pan rested near the stove. She gripped it tightly. The metal felt cold and reassuring in her trembling hands. The knob stopped moving. Silence stretched. Then came 3 soft knocks. Not polite, measured, intentional. "Martha," a low voice called. Her breath caught. The voice was unfamiliar, yet it carried a strange calm that felt more threatening. Elena appeared behind her. Fear widened her eyes. "Do not open it," Elena whispered. Another knock followed, this time harder. "I know you are inside." The words slid beneath the door like ice water. Martha forced herself to speak. "Who are you?" A brief pause. Then the man answered. "A friend of Daniel Hale." Every instinct inside her screamed that he was lying. Daniel never sent strangers at midnight. "I will call the police," Elena said loudly. A faint chuckle came from the other side. "You may try." At that exact moment, the power died. The cottage fell into absolute darkness. Elena gasped. Outside, the car engine shut off. Even the insects seemed to stop singing. The world narrowed into a suffocating quiet. Martha's mind sharpened. Darkness did not frighten her. Darkness had been her home for years. She guided Elena backward. "Go to the bedroom," she whispered. "Lock it." "What about you?" "I will follow." Elena hesitated, then obeyed. Floorboards creaked softly as she disappeared down the hall. Another sound followed, the faint scrape of metal against wood. The man was trying to force the lock. Martha's grip tightened on the pan. Her palms grew slick. The door shuddered once, twice. On the third impact, the lock snapped. The door swung inward with a hollow bang. Cold night air rushed inside. A silhouette filled the doorway. Broad shoulders, gloved hands, a cap pulled low over his face. He stepped in slowly, closing the door behind him. "You should not have involved yourself," he said calmly. Martha remained silent. Her eyes adjusted quickly. She saw the faint outline of something in his hand. Not a gun, a knife, long, narrow. Its edge caught a whisper of moonlight. "Where is the girl?" he asked. Martha forced confusion into her voice. "There is no girl here." He tilted his head slightly. "You are a poor liar." He took another step. The floor groaned beneath his weight. Martha moved sideways, placing the kitchen table between them. "You saved Daniel Hale," the man continued. "You ruined a very expensive plan." Shock rippled through her. "You cut the brakes," she said. "Yes, no hesitation, no remorse. Business is cleaner when accidents happen." Rage flared inside her chest. Daniel had given her warmth, safety, a life again, and this man tried to erase him like a mistake. "You will leave now," Martha said. The man smiled faintly. "I cannot do that." He lunged forward suddenly. The knife sliced through the air. Martha swung the pan with every ounce of strength she possessed. Metal cracked against bone. The man staggered. A sharp curse escaped his lips. He recovered quickly, too quickly. Pain flashed across her arm as the blade grazed her sleeve. She stumbled backward. Her hips slammed into the counter. The man advanced again, relentless. "You are stronger than you look," he said. "Most people would already be begging." "I am not most people," Martha replied. For years, she had survived nights colder than death. Men far crueler than this had tried to harm her. She refused to fall now. From the hallway came a sudden crash. "Elena." The man turned toward the sound instantly. Panic surged through Martha. She hurled the pan. It struck his shoulder and spun away. He cursed again and charged down the hall. "No," Martha shouted. She chased him, lungs burning. The bedroom door splintered as he kicked it open. Elena stood near the window, clutching a lamp like a weapon. Terror washed over her face. The man stepped inside. "There you are." Before he could move further, headlights exploded across the walls. Another vehicle roared into the driveway. Tires shrieked, doors slammed, voices shouted. The attacker froze. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his posture. "Police!" a voice thundered. "Drop the weapon!" The man bolted toward the back window, and glass shattered as he crashed through it. Cold wind tore into the room. Officers sprinted around the house. The struggle erupted outside. Grunts, commands, the metallic snap of handcuffs. Martha sank against the wall, her body shaking violently now that the danger had broken. Elena rushed into her arms. "You saved me again," Elena sobbed. Sirens painted the trees red and blue. Moments later, Daniel burst through the front door. His face was ghost pale. He pulled Elena close, then looked at Martha. Emotion overwhelmed his voice. "I was terrified I would be too late." She tried to answer, but exhaustion dragged her downward. The room tilted. Darkness crept in from the edges. When Martha opened her eyes again, soft daylight filtered through unfamiliar curtains. A hospital monitor beeped steadily beside her. Daniel sat nearby, shoulders slumped with fatigue. Relief flooded his face when he saw her awake. "The knife barely missed the artery," he said. "You lost blood, but you will recover." She noticed tears shining in his eyes. "Why would he come after me?" she asked weakly. Daniel inhaled slowly. "He worked for my former partner, a man named Victor Rains." The name carried weight. "He wanted control of my company," Daniel continued. "When I refused, he decided death would be easier than negotiation. And now Victor is in custody." Days later, the truth spread across the city. News channels spoke of the homeless woman who saved a billionaire twice. People who once passed Martha without a glance now spoke her name with awe. Letters arrived. Flowers crowded her hospital room. Yet none of that mattered as much as the quiet afternoon when Elena entered carrying a small wooden box. Inside rested a simple silver key. "What is this?" Martha asked. Elena smiled through tears. "It is yours." Daniel stepped forward. "The cottage is no longer just a place to stay. It belongs to you." Martha stared at the key, unable to speak. All her life, doors had been closed to her. Now one was finally hers to open. Winter melted into spring. Grass returned. The lake shimmered beneath warm sunlight. Martha planted flowers along the porch. Each bloom felt like proof that life could begin again at any age. One evening, as the sky blushed gold, Elena joined her on the steps. "Do you ever regret helping my father?" she asked softly. Martha looked across the water. She remembered the freezing rain, the flames, the terror in a stranger's eyes. Then she remembered this peace, this family she never expected. "No," she said gently. "Kindness always finds its way back." Elena slipped her hand into Martha's. "You gave me my father." She won fans. "And you gave me a home." Months later, the city held a ceremony honoring acts of courage. Martha almost refused to attend. Crowds still made her uneasy, but Daniel insisted. When her name echoed through the hall, the audience rose to its feet. Applause thundered around her. She stepped onto the stage slowly. Lights glowed overhead. For a brief moment, she felt the frightened woman she once was begin to fade. Daniel handed her the medal, yet it was Elena who embraced her longest. As Martha turned toward the audience, her eyes caught something that made her breath falter. Near the back stood several homeless men and women. People she recognized from the streets. Their clothes were worn, their faces tired, but they were smiling at her with unmistakable pride. Tears blurred her vision. After the ceremony, she walked straight to them. No hesitation, no distance. She hugged each one, because she knew how invisible they felt. That night, Martha made a decision. The cottage land was large, too large for one person. With Daniel's help, small homes began to rise beside it. Warm, safe, affordable. A place where no one would be forced to sleep beneath broken awnings again. On the day the first family moved in, Martha stood quietly watching children race across the grass. Laughter floated through the air. For the first time in decades, the sound did not feel foreign. Daniel approached her. "You changed more lives than you realize." She shook her head. "You stopped the car that night." "I only pulled you out," he smiled softly. "And you pulled all of us towards something better." Years later, on a calm summer afternoon, Martha sat by the lake with Elena. Sunlight danced across the water like scattered diamonds. "Are you happy?" Elena asked. Martha considered the question carefully. She thought of the rain-soaked streets, the hunger, the nights when she believed the world had forgotten her. Then she looked at the homes behind her, the gardens, the people who now called her neighbor, the family who called her their hero. "Yes," she answered, "I am deeply happy." Elena rested her head on Martha's shoulder. "You know," she whispered, voice trembling, "if you had walked away from that wreck, I would have lost my father forever." Martha squeezed her hand. "And if I had walked away from that little girl behind the dumpster, I would have lost my daughter." Elena began to cry quietly. So did Martha. Two lives once abandoned by the world, now forever intertwined. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of fire and rose. Martha watched the reflection shimmer and realized something that made her chest ache with gratitude. The night she helped a stranger, she believed she was saving one life. She never imagined she was actually saving her own. Years later, as Martha sat beside the quiet lake watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, she finally understood the true meaning of that night. The stranger she saved had become family. The little girl she once protected now called her mother, and the woman the world once ignored had built a place where no one would ever feel abandoned again. Tears filled her eyes as Elena held her hand and whispered that one brave act of kindness had given her a father, a home, and a future. In that moment, Martha realized something that made her heart tremble with gratitude. The night she thought she was saving a stranger was actually the night that saved her, proving that even the smallest act of compassion can return in ways the heart can barely hold.